Today we have some absolutely spicy new info. And that is the first info on the Season 5 Conquest map. This was data mined in the most recent patch. We have quite a few new things, quite a few returning things about the Conquest map in Season 5, which basically indicates to us that the map will be changed. This has been in discussion for a long time, and it's kind of been not directly said, but somewhat mentioned that it's most likely gonna be the season where Conquest sees change again. It was supposed to be changed last season, but then the Joust overhaul got in the way. Then Clash kind of became the focal point of attention, but it seems like it's finally time for Conquest. And that is a good thing in many ways, because the meta in Conquest has been very stagnant. There has been a very small jungle that many people dislike, me included, and there have been various flaws with the map that just need some ironing out, and well, apparently that's what's gonna happen. So the first thing is something that we know that won't change, which is the theme of the map, which is Greek Conquest. We had that since forever basically, and that's gonna stay that way, so we can expect at least some of the design choices to transfer over. That, however, does not mean that the map will have to look the same. It was mentioned in the context of an earlier adventure that was praised for its design that many of these visual parts of the adventures are also things that are tested for the main game modes to see if they work out. So it would not be surprising if we see parts of, for example, the MMO-like adventure from the jungle part there, from the forest part, translated into the Conquest jungle. So while the theme remains the same, it doesn't necessarily mean it looks the same. And that will be reflected in the new Titans. Now, apologies in advance, I'm about to butcher a lot of names right here. I really don't know how to pronounce them. I'm not gonna bother looking all of them up for the 10 different definitions of how exactly you could pronounce them. So, in the first place, the Titans we have at the moment aren't really clearly certain deities or Titans or whatever. They just kind of resemble certain ones, and they could be those. For example, with the Order Titan, that's Alexirias and Aniketos or something, Aniketos. Those are kind of, well, the twins in the Greek mythology, though they are male, whereas the Titans that we have are female, so really not sure. There's also a bit of the depictions of justice in there with the blind eyes, so really not quite sure what they're supposed to mean. Likewise, for the current Chaos Titan, there is a theory that he's somewhat based on Perseus, but really nothing substantial, nothing where we could say, yes, this Titan is definitely this. That will change in the next Conquest map. One of the Titans will be Kronos, the Titan of Order, not to be confused with Kronos, it's with a U, and Themis, the Titaness of Justice, Law, and Order. Chaos and Order side still remain intact, with Kronos being the Titan for the Chaos side, and Themis being the one for the Order side. There will be new towers for both Chaos and Order, and some changes about the buffs in camp. The speed buff will now be held or guarded by a Centaur, the Void buff by a Chimera, and in case you've forgotten what the Void buff is, it's the one that reduces protections, the new purple buff. Then there's a Satyr buff, which is speed and MP5, so this might be a new blue buff, something changed about that, allowing it to have speed as well, though that is very surprising to me personally. Not quite sure how it will fit in, possibly through the map being big enough to warrant two characters having speed buffs for some extra mobility. A familiar old face also makes a return. The Manticore will now hold the red buff. Last but not least, the Fire Giant buff will also continue existing. However, while it continues existing, it is not quite the same. The current Fire Giant buff is as follows. This buff grants 70 magical power, 50 physical power, 4% HP 5, and 2% MP 5. It also increases the damage versus towers and phoenixes by 20%. The new buffs are a little different, and yes, it's buffs, it's two. The first one instead gives 50 magical power or 35 physical power, so 20 or 15 respectively less, and regenerates 2% of your health and 1% of your mana, so both of these stats being halved. So quite a fair bit less in terms of especially the regeneration, but also a fair bit less damage. The damage against towers and phoenixes is still increased by 20%. And that's the Might buff. But then there's also the Rage buff. The Rage buff is stronger than the current Fire Giant buff. The Rage buff gives up to 90 magical power, so 20 more, and 60 physical power, 10 more, while the regeneration is the same, 4% and 2% as compared to the current Fire Giant buff. The damage against phoenixes and towers is also increased by again 20%. And another note on this is Enhanced Fire Giant. This concept should not be completely unfamiliar to you if you've ever played Clash. And I feel like Clash may have been the testing ground for bringing this into Conquest as well. In Clash we have Enhanced Apophis who after a certain time into the game will spawn and be a stronger version of the base version with a stronger buff tied to that. So this will basically prevent too early snowball with a Fire Giant buff, as the buff won't be as potent then, but in very late game the Fire Giant will be even more important, will be even more highly contested, as the buff will be even stronger, even more beneficial as such. On a small side note, not only the Fire Giant is changed, apparently the jungle buffs also come with more than just a visual update. For example, it notes for the Centaur that it has some kind of impact attack, so there will be subtle changes to the attack chains maybe or something like that as well. For minions, we only know that there will be archers, brutes and swordsmen just as before, so the basic minion spawn will probably not change too much, and that shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. The, in my opinion, most interesting part is what comes now. We've seen that there are various buffs that existed before that may be slightly changed in what they provide. For example, if the blue buff will maybe provide speed instead of cooldown reduction now, or that is just a change that is just weirdly documented. But there are also new camps or new creatures that weren't in the game previously. And there are two of those. The first one is the Oracle Fury. We know that there are the Oracle Harpies, but Fury is by definition always been tied to the Gold Fury. Any other kind of smaller flying female thing with feathers has been a Harpy ever since, and only the Gold Fury got the Fury title. That indicates that the Oracle Fury is probably stronger than the Harpies. Question is, where is it gonna be and what exactly is it gonna do? Is it gonna be some bigger objective that allows you to get more vision across the whole map maybe, or a bigger area in general? Is it gonna be as strong as the Gold Fury? Or, what could be possible as well, is it potentially replacing the Gold Fury? It wouldn't be completely surprising if the decision was made to take the Gold Fury out, knowing that Riot has done something similar with League of Legends, where they previously had an objective that was primarily focused on giving your team gold, but that always had this kind of snowball taste to it. However, it worked, and it would kind of change into some sort of buff that stacks the more you kill the objective. So maybe the Oracle Fury will be a replacement, or will be somewhere else on the map. And likewise, there is going to be a Fire Oracle. This could pretty much be the same way that the elementals are currently placed around it, or like the Oracle Harpies are at the Gold Fury, and just be something that gives vision of the Fire Giant area, or this could be something completely different. The more important point, without knowing what exactly these things do, to take away here is that there will probably be more objectives on the map, unless both of them end up being replacement for something else. And that means that there needs to be room for these objectives. And that means that there would have to be a bigger jungle to place them somewhere, unless you want to squeeze them in even deeper between all the things that we already have, but I highly doubt that there's even room to squeeze anything in at this point without making it look a bit ridiculous. So my hopes are that these things are just additions, and as such mean that there will be a bigger jungle. Fingers crossed on my end here. Last but not least, there is a quick mention of the Minotaur without anything to it, so not really sure what that's gonna be about or if we're gonna see him. As always, this is obviously data mined, so this can all change, this can all end up completely different in the end, especially with relatively sensitive information that's, you know, still in a very early stage and probably mostly held under lockdown. So don't get too excited yet, but I think it's very interesting to know about these things and see how things develop from here. Thanks to Smite Data Mining for letting me use this information. Link will be down in the description below. With that, thank you guys for watching. quick reminder, if you're not subscribed yet and you want to see more of this kind of content, feel free to click the sub button and the bell next to it and it will notify you of new videos. Other than that, see you for the next one tomorrow. DukeSloth, out.